So welcome back to 3205. In last week, we discussed about the application of remote sensing in agriculture. So whenever we will be dealing with any course, okay, think of that as storytelling as well, just like what we were discussing before the class began. Okay, think of it as a storytelling. Think of it, there are multiple stories involved, and we are exploring those stories. We are trying to learn. অনেকটা যে ইসপের গল্প শুনেছি না, তো ইসপের গল্পে শেষে একটা করে মোরাল থাকে, একটা করে কথা থাকে যে এটার মানে কি, অথবা জাতক যদি কেউ পড়ে থাকো, জাতকের শেষে একটা করে মোরাল লেখা থাকে। এগুলোকে সম্ভবত বলা হয় অ্যানেকডোট, সামথিং লাইক দ্যাট। So think of all these things are just like that. Okay, these are stories, and these stories have some significance. They have some messages. Okay, and you have to understand, or you have to grasp that message. So last week we talked about how remote sensing is being used in agriculture. We will continue these uses of remote sensing in this lecture. Then we will talk about how the remote sensing works. Okay, what are the components of remote sensing involved in the system? So the second example that we will be talking about is forestry. In forestry, remote sensing is highly involved and being used. Even in Bangladesh, in BFT, they are utilizing the technologies of remote sensing to identify homestead forest, deforestation, thinning of the forest, the height of the trees, and based on the height of the trees, they are also determining how much carbon do we have stock, or how much carbon stock do we have, how much biomass is available in Sundarbans, and every year how much biomass is being either being released to the atmosphere, or we are losing biomass, or how much biomass we are getting back to the forest. So we can do all these calculations. However, along with these calculations, we can also do forest health analysis. So, and this one is quite important. Okay, in future you will be encountering this forest health analysis frequently. If you continue your masters here, you will be doing remote sensing by Nilufa madam, and Nilufa madam will be showing you how to calculate NDVI. In fact, in this course, I might show you how to calculate NDVI. So NDVI is one indices. It's called Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. Okay? So what it does is it takes two bands of a satellite image and then normalize them by subtracting with each other, and based on the result of this normalization, we can find out what is the condition of forest health. That means what is the condition of vegetation. So what's inside forest? So everything inside forest, they are usually vegetation. So what we do in this analysis, we try to find out what is the health of the vegetation. So once you find out the health of vegetation, essentially you are getting the health of the forest. However, these calculations can not only be used in forest health analysis, but also other types of vegetation analysis. For example, you want to find out how the health of the forest has been degrading or improving in Dhaka city because of urbanization or because of controlling the urbanization. Okay, so how can you do that? Because you are trying to find out the changes between 1990 and 2020. So there is a 30 years of gap, and I don't think you were born in 1990. So you are talking about some time even before your birth. So how can you do that? So you can easily access satellite images of 1990, run this forest health analysis or vegetation health analysis based on 1990's image, and then do the same analysis based on 2020 image, and then voila, you can find out the changes. Different changes happened in the vegetation health of 1990 to 2020. For example, recently there was an article published in Pratham Alo. In that article, Ashraf Dewan, he is a researcher and he is also my bachelor supervisor. He said that the temperature in Dhaka city has been increasing over the time, and we have to control all these things, and etc. etc. So he mentioned that the failure of controlling such temperature, such urban temperature, is due to the poor planning or the poor infrastructural development or unplanned development. So in response, what I have found on Facebook group of DAP, okay, DAP. So in DAP group, one quite renowned planner, he posted that, okay, so Ashraf Bhai has said all these things, but these things are quite not right, because over the time the urban temperature has been rather dropping instead of increasing. That means the urban heat islands, they are disappearing. Okay, so now you may ask, what is urban heat islands? So urban heat islands are something like this. For example, if you look into this cover photo, you will see, obviously these are not urban heat islands, they are rather vegetation. However, I will draw an example based on these. So if you look into this photo, you will see that there are little islands in red color. So just imagine this is the map of temperature. And if it's map of temperature, the surrounding areas are cooler than these islands or the red areas. So by red, we are denoting that this is high temperature. And if you go to blue, or if you call it cyan, if you go to cyan, then the temperature is dropping. So if we imagine that, if we think that, then obviously this area is significantly have high temperature than the surrounding areas. So this phenomena is known as urban heat island in urban analysis or urban and planning studies. So the planner, he was claiming that, okay, so according to the DAP plan, or according to the report by DAP, the urban heat islands, they are disappearing. That means the temperature are not significantly higher than the surroundings in Dhaka city. Okay, so the statement of Professor Ashraf Dewan is not really that right. So he was also claiming that maybe he have missed this report or something like that. Okay, so just like that, you will see there are multiple stories. You have to catch the stories and you have to criticize them. Okay, do not just blindly believe anything. That is what I'm trying to say. So that way, for example, okay, let's get back to the slide. So we were talking about forest health analysis. You can also do fragmentation analysis. So how the forests, they have been fragmented, or for example, how the vegetation have been fragmented in the past, from past to the present. Okay, অর্থাৎ fragmented বলতে গুচ্ছ গুচ্ছ ভাগ হয়ে গিয়েছে কিভাবে. Okay, this is also highly used in landscape analysis. Whenever you are trying to find out the development of a city or development of an urban area, what you can do is you can perform such fragmentation analysis. You can find out how these urban areas were fragmented before, and now these fragmentations are making some clusters, and these clusters are with the time they are forming some urban areas, or they are forming some city areas. You can do that. Also, when we were talking about the temperature study, you can relate the temperature study with the forest health analysis, or just simply, the forest map. Okay, how? Because you can find out that how are the conditions of vegetation held in Dhaka city in 2020 and how they were in 1990. So if you find that, okay, so vegetation the health of vegetation have been improving over the time. So it's much better now than in 1990. And they have a very good, the health of the vegetation and the vegetation cover has a, negative correlation with the temperature. So if the cover of the vegetation increases, if the health of the vegetation increases, that means there is a good chance that the temperature has been dropping over the time in the urban areas, because these vegetations, they are cooling down the surroundings, they're absorbing the heat. Okay, they are creating shades and others. So in forestry, you can also create the forest roadmaps. You can also talk about digital elevation model. And for example, if you go to Sundarbans and if you go to Chittagong Hill Tracts, these two types of forests are totally different. And then if you go to Chittagong Hill Tracts and if you come to Shal Forest, these two forests, they are different. Okay, their terrains are different. So sometimes you have to find out the digital elevation model. That means you have to find out the elevation that is underneath the trees. If you want to find out the model of the terrain, you have to find out the elevation under the trees. So quickly, let me draw something. So for example, this is a hill that you have, and you have trees on this hill, and all of these are tree covers. Okay, and then you have these tall trees here, these tall trees, for example, but the land or the terrain went flat. So if you have a satellite on top, and then if you try to measure the elevation of the land, it's quite not possible to determine the elevation of the land, because if you are taking some optical imagery, then you are getting the surface of this tree. So by optical imagery, we have discussed it before. So by optical imagery, I mean, if you look from up here and look down, and what you will see is you will see this tree cover, and you say that, okay, so I don't see the land. All I see is these trees. So the height that I'm getting, they should, or they may be look like this underneath of the trees. And then also, if you think of the SAR image or synthetic aperture radar that we talked about in the first class, I think. So if you think of that, so these signals, these radio signals, they can actually penetrate these trees, okay, and they can bounce back. There is a possibility that they are bouncing back, and sometimes there is a little gaps in the canopies, for example, like here. So the signals are going in and bumping back to the sensor. Okay, so this is the sensor. Similar things are happening here. The signals are coming in and then going back to the sensor. Okay. However, the problem is you do not have any gap between these canopies or between these trees. Since you do not have any gap, you cannot say that, okay, so the land straight became like that. You cannot say that. You cannot make that conclusion, because the land could go like this. Okay, the trees here could be, with less height than these trees. These trees could be very tall, and having the layer of the canopy from up above, it might look like it's a flat surface, or it's a gradual slope where it's not a gradual. So there are some, something like a valley, not really a valley. There could be some degradation, then again upslope, downslope, upslope, and then again flat, and then gradual decrease of the slope, something like that. So now with advancement of new technology, for example, JEDI, and JEDI releases this laser pulses, which can easily penetrate the vegetation, the canopy cover, and then get reflected by the ground level. So by using these, now we can map these, the bed of the forest, or the floor bed of the forest, which was impossible in the past. And that's why if you go to Bangladesh Forest Department, they have their elevation map of entire Bangladesh, except in Chittagong Hill Tracts. That means the elevation map of entire Bangladesh, except the Chittagong Hill Tracts, and in some northern part of country, for example, Moimansingh. There are Garo Pahars, okay, or Garo Hills in the Moimansingh area. So they failed to identify the elevation of this region because there are dense forest, thick forests there. So by using this LiDAR technology, now what you can do, you can find out the the cover of these lands which are underneath the trees, and if you want, you can even map out the forest. So if you map out this forest, you can actually find out the structure of individual trees, the structure of how the canopies look like. You can also find out if there is some deforestation going on, or you can find out if there is any thinning going on. So what is thinning? The thinning is before the deforestation, people cut down some trees in between the tree cover, okay, from different place to place. They take out 1 tree, 2 trees, and 3 trees. So once, or when you are taking out these 1, 2, 3, or 4 trees from a collection of trees, what's happening is the forest, they are thinning out. Then there is not really any deforestation going on yet, because there is no exposed soil can be visible from up the sky, but the forest is not thick as it were before. So that is called thinning. And also you can also find out when you will have the DEM, digital elevation model, you can also find out some relationship between this DEM, that is the elevation, and the socioeconomic parameters. For example, if you would like to find out the settlements in Chittagong Hill Tracts, you will find out the settlements are mostly located in the valleys between the hill ranges. Okay, so in this example, this is the DEM, this is the digital elevation model, which were collected from SRTM data. So in this model, you see the orange color is the highest and the green is the lowest point. And you will find that these are the hill ranges. These are the lines of the hills, which are going from north to south. And between these hill ranges, these are the valleys. And if you look into these settlements, that means the socioeconomic data, you will find that, okay, so these settlements are mostly located in the valley regions, in the valleys. If you go into the hills, for example, here, hardly you will find any settlements that can be visible from the sky or that can be easily identified from satellite image. Or even if when they created this settlement map in, I think the data is from 2009. So in this data of 2009, there were no settlements, no identifiable settlements in this region from this scale, of course. If you zoom in, then you will find more settlements. So here is also an example of NDVI change. You will find in 1989 to 2004, the northern part of Chittagong Hill Tracts has found the degradation of vegetation health. And then in 1989 to 2004, if you think of MSAVI, that is another index, you do not have to understand what is NDVI and what is MSAVI2. We'll discuss them. Just for now, just look into the pictures and try to correlate them, try to find out any relationship between them. So MSAVI2, what it does is it finds the moisture in the soil. Okay. Also, it finds the moisture in the canopy content. So how much moisture they can hold or they have in their structure. So, and if you look, you will find there is a quite good correlationship between them. In here, we can see that the health of the vegetation, they are not good. Okay, so their worsened vegetation condition is worsening over the time, and in these parts, they are improving in some forest areas. And if we look into this map, you can see the vegetation has decreased in this region. Why? Because they are drying out. The vegetations are drying out. That means they are on stress. Okay, and in this region, the vegetation is not that much stressed. Also, another reason is here is Kaptai Lake. So easily, this Kaptai Lake can feed or irrigate the vegetation nearby, whereas in this region, it's mostly hills. So less water source more stress on vegetation, thus the worsening condition of the vegetation health. Now, another field where remote sensing is highly used is environment. So in environment, also in disaster management, okay? So disaster management utilizes all these three fields of studies. In disaster management, you will be applying agriculture, you will be dealing with agriculture, you will be dealing with forestry, you will be dealing with environment as well. So in environmental science or in environment, it creates land use and land cover maps by using satellite images. It also creates hydrological maps. And then it finds out where the wildlife or wildlife are. It also creates where are my certain species is dying out, or certain species, that is the vegetation species, is in stress. It can find out the soil contamination map as well as the surface and groundwater contamination map. So groundwater contamination map is a little bit tricky, okay? You have to incorporate, remote sensing alone cannot do that. You have to incorporate multiple variables. However, remote sensing data could have some, play some important role in contamination in groundwaters. And then obviously, so what I'm trying to say is whatever you can see from up, that can be used in remote sensing. So you have a satellite, you went up, you are looking down, and you see the water cover, you see the water bodies. You can do wetland analysis. You see the urban areas, so you can now analyze. You can perform urban studies. You can find out the increase of urban areas and something like that. Then you went up, then you see that, okay, so there are sands and trees are dying out. So that means desertification is going on. So you take the data and you take the data of the same area of past 10 years, and you find that there is a desertification going on. There is a drought going on. Okay, so anything that can be seen from up can be mapped out in remote sensing and can be used or can be applied in different fields of studies. So land use map, what is a land use map? Or rather, I would say this is a land cover map instead of land use map. Okay, so this is DMA, Dhaka Metropolitan Area, or this is CCC, okay, Chittagong City Corporation Area, and this is a classified map of 2013, and this one is, although it says land use map, this one is actually land cover map. Why? What's the difference between land use and land cover? Land use map is just the way that the definition denotes it. It deals with the land use. How are you using that land? Are you using it for agriculture? Okay, so agriculture is a class of land use map. Okay, but if you say just vegetation, that one is not land use map. That one is a land cover map, because from up, you are in the sky, you are flying, and you are looking down, and you see green trees or green vegetation. So you instantly, you can say that this area is covered by vegetation, and then you map it out. So that one is a land cover map. You are only dealing with the covers. What are the things that is covering the ground? Okay, for example, another example could be then you are flying to another area, you look down and you see there is water bodies. So you say this is water. So water is covering that land, but you do not identify what type of water cover is that. You do not say that this is wetland, or you do not say that this is a canal. You do not say that this is a river. You do not say that this is a pond. Okay, you do not classify them based on their use. You do not classify them based on their movements. So that's why those kind of maps are known as land cover maps. And when you specifically classify for which purpose that land is being used and you map it out, that one is known as land use map. All right. So for that reason, this map doesn't really tell for which reason the land is being used. Rather, it says what things are covering the ground. So that's why, since it says, it identifies what things are covering the ground, this map is a land cover map, not land use map. All right. Anyway, so this is a land cover map of Chittagong City Corporation of 2013, and you will find the urban areas are covering this region and the vegetations are covering in this region. So if we go into other maps now, if we compare it with 1989, you will find out that vegetation were covering these regions, most of the region from this map or from this area. And then there were few corridors of urban areas based on the road networks. And eventually, after almost, let's say how many years? 24 years, okay? Almost 24 years, the urban areas have, increased. The extension of urban areas have increased to these places. So vegetation areas or vegetated areas have shrunk over these last 24 years. As well as if we think of the bare land, so the bare land has also lost, and in some cases, the bare land, the area of bare land has increased. For example, this region. So no urban development has been found in this region. However, the bare land has increased significantly. Okay, and in this part, the bare land has converted into urban areas. And then you can also find out you can do suitability analysis. So in this suitability analysis, in this example, this study was done in 2012. So in this example, you will find that, okay, so existing urban area is not suitable for further urban development. And there are multiple parameters used. So based on these parameters, one of the parameters was the river bodies. If there are river bodies, the close to the river body is not suitable to build because of the elevation and the possibility of the flood. And there also another parameter used, elevation was another parameter which was used. And in this elevation, if it's low elevated area, that is least suitable, and the high elevated areas are most suitable. And then another parameter was road network. If it's closer to the road network, then it's more suitable for urban development. And if it's far away from road network, then the suitability decreases with the distance from road network, that is. So from these study, you can see these areas in northwest part, these areas are the most suitable areas where you can make further urban development, whereas these areas, they are not really that suitable for any urban development. Okay. However, still we are having urban development in this region. So in disaster and risk. So I put disaster and risk separately because we are dealing with disaster and risk and other things. Okay, I mean, this department is disaster management department, so that's why this slide. Okay, so also it doesn't mean that you can only apply remote sensing in all these purposes. You can apply remote sensing in disaster management. You can apply from environmental impact assessment perspective or environmental perspective. You can also apply remote sensing from forestry perspective and agriculture perspective. As I said in previous week, that you can study food insecurity by using agriculture and remote sensing in disaster management. So in disaster and risk, usually what we do is the common uses are to finding out the flood extent. For example, at present, there are multiple floods are going on waters are pouring in from upper catchment, and it's flooding, the lower basin. So you can find out the extent of this flooding. You can find out which locations need, urgent help and support, etc. Other interesting things in our country are the landslide and ground movement maps. So easily from remote sensing, if you have elevation map, you can find out the slope in this region. If you have rainfall data, if you have rainfall data, and if you can find out the vegetation cover from remote sensing, then you can easily find out whether that particular slope or the hills or the regions, are they prone to landslide or not? What are the possibilities? Okay. And then if you incorporate the nearest settlements into the picture, into the map, if you bring them in, then you will find out the, whether that it's a hazard or not, that landslide, whether it's going to impact the human lives or not, all sorts of things. So fire damage maps, these are not that relevant to our country. However, well spill maps are very relevant to our country. We hear multiple stories of well being spilled on the rivers of Sundarbans and so on. So you can easily find out or identify the extent of well spill from remote sensing data. And then the final point, the building risk maps, these are also important. You can easily find out the footprints of buildings. In fact, one of the master student of previous year, she tried to identify the building footprints automatically from remote sensing data, and she actually did it to some extent. So it was a very interesting idea, and these things can be done. And why the building footprints are important? Because then you can use these building footprints in multiple studies. You can find out how the heats are getting trapped in between, the pockets of the buildings, or in between the buildings, how the heats are getting trapped. How can you respond to or for any emergency? Okay, how can rescue people, and so on and so on. Also, another important data is the height of the building. So I have been talking for quite some time. Let's now play a little game. So it's a guessing game. I played the same game with previous year. I did not change the images. I kept it the same. So if there is any student from last year, and if you know the answer, you may share it with us as well. So can you tell us what this is? What are you seeing? What are these things? So this is Perth. This is Western Australia. And can you tell us what are these? Anyone? No one? Hello?
Sir, can you repeat?
The question was not quite clear.
বুঝি নাই।
কোশ্চেনটা আরেকবার বললে স্যার একটু সুবিধা হতো।
প্রশ্নটা হচ্ছে, তোমরা কি তোমাদের ওদিকে ছবি একটা দেখতে পাচ্ছ যেখানে গেস হোয়াট ইজ ইট লেখা?
গেস, ইয়েস স্যার, দেখতে পাচ্ছি স্যার।
রাইট, সো জাস্ট লাইক ইট সেজ, গেস হোয়াট ইজ দিস। তোমাদের কাছে কি মনে হয় এটা কিসের ছবি?
Sir, it's a picture of
অস্ট্রেলিয়ার শোরলাইনের মতো লাগতেছে।
কিসের?
মানে অস্ট্রেলিয়া পার্থ লেখা আছে, বাট স্যার শোরলাইনের মতো লাগতেছে স্যার। মানে
শোরলাইনের মতো লাগছে, ওকে। And what are these things, these white things?
Sir, these white things are actually clouds.
Cloud, okay, একজন বলেছে cloud, তারপর any more ideas?
স্যার সল্ট স্যার মানে লবণ জমেছে স্যার, যদি স্যার ওটা মানে স্যালাইন ওয়াটার হয় এই সাইডে, তাহলে লবণ জমার একটা সম্ভাবনা থাকে স্যার, মানে ওই সাইডটায়।
Okay, so let's find out what this is. This is actually clouds, right? So তোমরা কি এটা নিচে পড়তে পারছো?
Yes, sir.
নিচে লেখা কি আসছে তোমাদের ওখানে?
Yes, sir.
ইয়েস স্যার, এসেছে।
So this one is cloud. All right. So এখানে কি হয়েছে, পার্টিকুলার দিস এরকম ক্লাউড সচরাচর দেখা যায় না। So because of some effect, possibly because of El Nino La Nina effect, okay, এখানে পার্টিকুলার একটা ক্লাউড আমাদের যে ইন্ডিয়ান ওশান আছে, ইন্ডিয়ান ওশান থেকে পরে অস্ট্রেলিয়ান কি বলে ওয়েস্টার্ন অস্ট্রেলিয়ান দিকে যাচ্ছিল, and the satellites, they caught that image and it was quite interesting. Okay, so next image is there, more examples. So this is Australia, and then this is the actual photo. Okay, so these are the clouds that were going to the landmass. Now how about this? What are these lines that you see? You see there are multiple lines. What are these? What do you think?
So these are jet trails.
Okay, any more ideas?
So these also look like clouds, just plain old clouds circulating with the help of wind movement.
Okay, আর কারো কোনো কিছু অ্যাড করার আছে? Any more guess? No? So these are the trails of ships. Multiple যে জাহাজ গিয়েছিল, so জাহাজ যাওয়ার পরে তার একটা ট্রেল রেখে যায়. These are these trails. Okay, and what do you think? What's going on here?
Sir, this is a
Sir, is this a
maybe.
glacier?
Sir, this is not ice. This is salt, maybe.
This is salt. Okay, একজন বলেছে this is salt.
Because sir, there are waters in some places.
There are water in some places. একজন বলেছে okay, and
Sir, this could be a glacier.
glacier.
No,
Okay, একজন বলেছে glacier, and any more idea? Okay, so the second person was right. This one is taken from a glacier, and this is quite significant because this is one of the glacier that has been being lost very frequently. And if you look into these photos, you will see these the ice, they were going downhill and they are going to the sea. Okay, যদি তোমরা দেখো এই যে এই রিজিয়ন থেকে এইভাবে চলে যাচ্ছে and মিশে যাচ্ছে, and if you look closely, then these ice, they are falling onto the sea, and then the water is getting mixed. Okay, so this is not saline water. এটাকে আমরা কি বলি, নন স্যালাইন ওয়াটার গুলোকে?
Sir, fresh water.
Fresh water, right, exactly. So this is fresh water and this is saline water, and the salinity of the water in this region is quite low. Okay, so that's quite easily visible, the differences between the water of this region and this region.
স্যার আমার একটা কোশ্চেন আছে।
হ্যাঁ বলো।
স্যার আমি না এই যে আপনি যে দেখালেন এগুলো আগেও একটা ছবি দেখেছিলাম, আমি না স্যার এগুলো দেখে বুঝি না এগুলো কিসের ছবি, কিন্তু অনেকেই তো দেখতেছে বুঝে গেছে। এগুলো বুঝবো কিভাবে কোনটা কিসের? আমি
ওকে, তো এটার তো স্পেসিফিক কোনো অ্যান্সার নাই। ইট কুড বি দ্যাট these people who have answered or who understand the phenomenon, maybe they were spending a lot of time on the internet and looking into different pictures, looking into how the glaciers are being lost, how they are changing, or they looked into how the planes, they leave their trails and so on. So one of the thing, আমি তোমার প্রশ্ন আমাকে একটা সুন্দর একটা ঘটনা মনে করাই দিল। সেটা হচ্ছে তোমাদের রিসার্চ স্যার তখন নতুন নতুন পিএইচডি করতে গিয়েছে। তো পিএইচডি তে যাওয়ার পরে তার প্রফেসর তাকে একটা ছবি দেখিয়ে বলেছে যে এই ছবিটা কি বলো। হ্যাঁ, তো বলার পরে তারপরে এখন রিফাত আর উত্তর দিতে, রিফাত এটা বলে ওটা বলে এটা বলে ওটা বলে, যাই বলে সেটাই তার প্রফেসর বলছেন না, দিস ইজ নট দ্যাট। হ্যাঁ, তো শেষ পর্যন্ত রিফাত হার মানলো, বললো যে ওকে, সো আই ডোন্ট নো। তো তার উত্তরটাকে রিফাতকে দিয়ে দিল। কি উত্তর দিয়েছে আমার এখন মনে নাই। তো দেওয়ার পরে এখন রিফাতকে একটা, এটা হচ্ছে ক্লাসে হচ্ছে, কিন্তু দিস ইজ নট জাস্ট ক্যাজুয়াল মিটিং। তো তারপরে রিফাতকে একটা অ্যাসাইনমেন্ট দিল। অ্যাসাইনমেন্ট হচ্ছে তুমি একটা ছবি খুঁজে নিয়ে আসবা যেটা দেখে আমি বলতে পারবো না যে এটা কিসের ছবি। তো তারপরে রিফাত অনেক খুঁজলো, আমাকে বললো যে কয়েকটা ইমেজ শেয়ার কর, আমিও খুঁজলাম, একটু হেল্প করলাম। হেল্প করার পরে ফাইনালি রিফাত করলো কি, একটা ব্রিক ফিল্ডের ছবি দিল। হ্যাঁ, তো ব্রিক ফিল্ডের ছবি কিভাবে দিল? ব্রিক ফিল্ডের ছবি দিয়েছে হচ্ছে তোমার ওই যে অনেক জায়গা থাকে না যেখানে শুধুমাত্র একটাই ব্রিক ফিল্ড থাকে, মানে আশেপাশে কিন্তু ব্রিক ফিল্ড নাই, আশেপাশে এগ্রিকালচারাল ল্যান্ড। হ্যাঁ, তো ব্রিক ফিল্ডের ছবি যখন নিয়েছে তখন ওই জায়গায় কিন্তু ছোট করে একটা ডট দেখা যাচ্ছে, which one is the chimney of the brick field, and then there are some multiple structures, regular structures, and then this region was surrounded by agricultural land. So obviously agricultural land এ তখন ধরো yield হচ্ছে বা চাষবাস হচ্ছে, তো এটা সবুজ ছিল। তো সুপারভাইজার এটা বলে ওটা বলে, রিফাত বলে না না না, হচ্ছে না। শেষ পর্যন্ত সুপারভাইজার হার মানলো, বললো এটা কি, তখন রিফাত বললো দিস ইজ ব্রিক ফিল্ড। ওকে, তো এখান থেকে একটা লেসন্স লার্ন যেটা হলো সেটা হচ্ছে সুপারভাইজার যেটা রিফাতকে শেখানোর চেষ্টা করেছে সেটা হচ্ছে রিমোট সেন্সিং ঘরে বসে হয় না। হ্যাঁ, তুমি ঘরে বসে বসে রিমোট সেন্সিং এর, অর্থাৎ আমরা ঘরে বসে বসে রিমোট সেন্সিং এর অনেক বড় এক্সপার্ট হয়ে যেতে পারি, বাট ইফ উই ডু নট হ্যাভ দ্য আইডিয়া অফ দ্য রিয়ালিটি, অর্থাৎ রিয়ালিটি কি হচ্ছে, দিস রিমোট সেন্সিং মাইট নট বি অফ নো ইউজ, হয়তো কোনো কাজেই আসবে না। তো রিমোট সেন্সিং বলো, জিআইএস বলো, যাই বলো না কেন, যে কোনো স্টাডি, হ্যাঁ, এটার জন্য আসলে আমাদেরকে উই হ্যাভ টু গো আউট, উই হ্যাভ টু সি দ্য রিয়ালিটি, আমাদেরকে দেখতে হবে আসলে কি হচ্ছে। ফর এক্সাম্পল তোমরা গাবুরা গিয়েছো, গাবুরা গিয়ে কিন্তু অনেকের ধরো ফার্স্ট হ্যান্ডে যখন এক্সপিরিয়েন্স হয়েছে তখন তোমার কোস্টাল ধরো রেজিলিয়েন্স বলো, বা তোমার কোস্টালের যে সোশিও ইকোনমিক কন্ডিশন বলো, বা তাদের সাইকোলজি বলো, সে ব্যাপারে কিন্তু তোমাদের একটা ভালো একটা আইডিয়া হয়েছে না, যেটা তোমরা কোনোদিন ক্লাসরুমে বসে পাওনি, রাইট? তো জাস্ট লাইক দ্যাট। তো এখানে যে জিনিসটা আমি করতে পারি সেটা হচ্ছে আমি তোমাকে থিওরি গুলো শেখাতে পারি, বাট অ্যাপ্লিকেশন যখন আসবে ইউ হ্যাভ টু বি ইন দ্য ফিল্ড। তো আমার ক্ষেত্রেও অ্যাপ্লিকেশন যখন আসে তখন কিন্তু আমি যেসব ফিল্ড দেখেছি, যেসব জায়গায় গিয়েছি, যেমন আমার যত কাজ, সেই কাজগুলো হচ্ছে হয় চিটাগং হিল ট্র্যাক্স অথবা তোমার ঢাকা, কারণ এই এলাকাটা আমি জানি। তো যেহেতু আমি জানি, so I can easily by looking into the satellite images I can understand what's going on and what are the things. ঠিক আছে, এছাড়াও আমি তোমাদেরকে সম্ভবত একটা ছবি দেখিয়েছিলাম এবং জিজ্ঞেস করেছিলাম যে ঢাকায় এখানে আসলে কি হয়েছে। এখানে দেখা যাচ্ছে ভেজিটেশন ইনক্রিজ হয়েছে, যেটা হচ্ছে মানে কি বলবো, মানে ইট সিমস নট রাইট, কারণ লার্জ একটা এরিয়ায় ভেজিটেশন কাভার তৈরি হয়ে গেল amid the urban development, doesn't make any sense. তখন কিন্তু একজন স্টুডেন্ট তোমরা বলেছিলে এটা 2207 দেখিয়েছিলাম। তো তখন একজন স্টুডেন্ট কিন্তু বলেছিল যে স্যার এটা হচ্ছে যে ওয়েটল্যান্ড ফিল আপ করে তারপরে আরবান ডেভেলপমেন্ট করা হচ্ছে। তো তার মানে তখন কি ধরে নিব? তো তার মানে ওই স্টুডেন্ট আসলে জানে যে ঢাকার আশেপাশে কি মানে চলছে, ওয়েটল্যান্ড ভরাট করে তারপরে আরবান ডেভেলপমেন্ট চলছে। তো এই ইনফরমেশনটা তার জানা ছিল দেখে এখন সে ওই ছবিটা দেখে ওইটার সাথে রিলেট করে সেটার এক্সপ্লেনেশনটা দিতে পারছে। তো আমার মনে হয় এই ক্ষেত্রে আমাদেরকে যে মানে তোমার প্রশ্নের উত্তরের জন্য যেটা করতে হবে সেটা হচ্ছে we have to spend or invest our time into exploring different regions, or at least have some ideas. ওটাই আর কি। আদার কোনো প্রশ্ন কি আছে? Alright, so let's move on with the slides. আমার মনে হয় এটাই আজকে লাস্ট স্লাইড নাকি?
Sir, I have shared the link of a video. Can you
আমি শুনতে পাচ্ছি না।
because
someone is
sir,
talking? কেউ কথা বলছো?
yes sir. Sir, me. Hello?
একজন মেসেজ দিয়েছো।
Hello?
ড্রোন। সাদমান তুমি কি কিছু বলছো?
Sir,
আমি তোমার কথা
am I
শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
audible? Am I audible?
হ্যালো
Hello sir, am I audible?
স্যার সাদমান বলছে স্যার ও একটা
কেউ একজন মনে হয় কথা বলছো,
পাঠিয়েছে।
তোমরা কি কেউ কোনো কিছু শুনতে পাচ্ছ?
সাদমান কথা বলছে স্যার।
Hello sir, am I audible? Hello? Sir, am I audible?
সাদমান স্যার মনে হয় তোর কথা শুনতে পাচ্ছে না।
সরি, আমার সম্ভবত যে হেডফোনের শেষ হয়ে গিয়েছিল, চার্জ শেষ হয়ে গিয়েছিল, চেঞ্জ করেছি। বলো সাদমান, সরি একটু রিপিট করো তো
Sir,
প্লিজ।
am I audible?
হ্যাঁ এখন শুনতে পাচ্ছি, বলো।
Sir, I have shared a link of a video which is regarding remote sensing, which is not actually the satellite based, but it would be quite easy if we can look on it. It's actually on forest monitoring using drone.
Okay. এটা কি বাংলাদেশেরটা পাঠিয়েছো, যে বাংলাদেশের রিসেন্টলি যে ড্যাফোডিল ইউনিভার্সিটি যেটা করলো, নাকি অন্য দেশে?
No sir, it's from another country. They are using drone, and they are using radio, like the radio images actually.
Radio
they are
images.
actually, yes sir.
So I'm guessing that is SAR. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
in Bangladesh, the similar studies are also going on. So do you remember that you went to that, what do you call it, park in your field trip of first semester or first year?
Yes sir.
Right. So তোমরা কি একটা পার্কে গিয়েছিলে না, যে কি জানি নাম, এটার নাম গাজীপুরের ওদিকে?
Sir, Bhawal National Park.
Right, Bhawal National Park. So they did their first pilot study. I think it's from Daffodil University in collaboration with some American universities. I think that university is located in Hawaii. It was a fund from USAID. They did their study and they used some drone to fly over this Bhawal National Park and to find out the health of the vegetation and also find out the condition of the forest. Now that project has been now extended in Sundarbans. Now they are trying to fly multiple drones over Sundarbans and try to map the entire Sundarbans. So these are quite interesting. I would suggest everyone to go through the video that Sadman shared. It could be quite insightful. Okay. So now let's talk about how this. Yes.
There was also another one by the same, maybe same or similar to it. It was using drones and it was using remote sensing for pipeline networking also. I would share it afterwards.
All right.
Just
Very
using
good.
remote sensing.
Okay. And if you have also attended the last SOTM Asia conference that was held in Dhaka last year, so if you attended that, and you might have seen the presentation of one Indian guy, and he was presenting how they were using these drones and OpenStreetMap to find out the length of the optical fiber is needed in South India. Okay, so South India যে গভর্নমেন্ট গুলো আছে সেই গভর্নমেন্ট গুলো তারা বলছিল যে আমরা অপটিক ফাইবার বসাবো বা অপটিক্যাল ফাইবার বসাবো আমাদের এই রাজ্যগুলোতে। এখন আমাদের কতটুকু আসলে অপটিক্যাল ফাইবার আমাদের কেনা উচিত? হ্যাঁ, তুমি যদি আজকে ভেন্ডরদেরকে ডাকো, ভেন্ডররা কিন্তু এসে, তুমি যদি জানা না থাকে, ভেন্ডররা এসে এই দরপত্র আহ্বান করে না, তো টেন্ডারে এসে তারা তোমাকে 9-6 বুঝাইতে পারে, বলতে পারে যে যেখানে 5টা লাগবে সেখানে 5 মিটার লাগবে, সেখানে বলতে পারে 10 মিটার লাগবে। So the government, they needed to know the exact length or the possible exact length of these fibers. So one company, I think, I don't know where that company is from, I forgot actually, Kerala or something. So that company, they said, okay, we can do it, and the information was needed very urgently, so the time was very short, and they devised a plan. So in their plan, what they did was they took multiple drones, they flew the drones over the roads where the land where the optical fiber will be, you know, laid, and then they also used OpenStreetMap to figure out the distances. Okay, তো তারা যে কাজটা করে, তারা এইভাবে রিমোট সেন্সিং নিয়ে ড্রোন নিয়ে গিয়েছে, তারা কতটুকু ফ্লাই করলো, কোন কোন এরিয়া, ওই জায়গাটার কি অবস্থা, এটা কতটুকু উঁচা নিচু এটসেট্রা। কারণ উঁচু নিচু যদি হয় তখন কিন্তু তোমার ডিস্টেন্স একই, ধরো এখান থেকে মিরপুর 10-এর ডিস্টেন্স সেম, কিন্তু এটা যদি মাঝখানে যদি একটা পাহাড় থাকে, ডিস্টেন্স কিন্তু সেম থাকলো না। ওকে, horizontal distance is same, let's say 2 kilometers, but if there is a hill in between, then the distance might increase to 5 kilometers, from 2 kilometer থেকে 5 kilometer এরকম। So they investigated and they submitted their report in 1 month, within 1 month. So 1 মাসের মধ্যে দিয়েছে, দরপত্র কমপ্লিট হয়েছে। Now I think, yeah, so that guy came into the SOTM conference and then he presented their progress or their activity that they have done. It was very interesting. So these sorts of things, multiple things can be done. Okay, then I have also I have a friend who has the building footprints of Dhaka, including the heights of the buildings. So they are architects. Since they are architects, they collect information of the heights and the structure of the building. So every semester, his students, what they do is they go in different places and they collect the building footprints as well as the height of the buildings and the structure of the buildings. They actually create maps of the buildings, and he wanted to upload this data into OSM. Okay, and later on, what I have realized is these data, they are not georeferenced. Since they are not georeferenced, that means they do not have any locational information. Since they do not have any locational information, that data is virtually useless, okay, for any analysis or remote sensing. For for studying architecture, yes, that is useful. But if you come to GIS and remote sensing, that data is not very useful, okay, because no locational information is given. Only the building footprints, the size of the buildings, everything is there. I mean, the building is, let's say, 400 square feet, that is there, okay, but তুমি যদি বিল্ডিং যদি তোমার হয়, let's say 4000 square feet, that's there, all right. But এই যে বিল্ডিংটা কোথায় বসবে, বিল্ডিং এর কোন কোণাটা কোন কোঅর্ডিনেটে বসছে, এটা তো আমাকে জানতে হবে to use it in GIS analysis. But that information is missing. So that is the the knowledge gap between multiple disciplines, multiple genres. So we have to overcome these knowledge gaps, especially you, because you are disaster. You are studying disaster management, and disaster management overlaps with multiple field of studies. So you must explore the other field of studies. You must explore their theories and their practices as well. So good. Anyway, let's get back to the lecture. So in remote sensing, what do we do? How does it work? In the application of remote sensing, not in the data collection. Data collection is the second step of the entire remote sensing application. Okay, অর্থাৎ রিমোট সেন্সিং একটা প্রবলেম যখন আমরা থাকে, এই প্রবলেমটাকে কিভাবে সলভ করি, অর্থাৎ অ্যাপ্লিকেশন ওয়াইজ যখন আমি অ্যাপ্লাই করতে যাব রিমোট সেন্সিং ডাটাকে, এন্টায়ার যে রিসার্চ হবে বা একটা প্রজেক্ট হবে সেটা দেখতে কিরকম হবে সেটা এখানে ডিসকাস করা হয়েছে। So in the first step we have statement of the problem, just like your 3103. Okay, in 3103 I guess you have already studied this 8-step model of or framework of doing any research. So just like that, how would you do any remote sensing research? You must follow these 4 steps. In the first step, you have to deal with the statement of the problem. You have to find out, based on the reality, the context of reality, you have to find out what are the hypotheses or what are the problem that is you are going to deal with. Once you understand that, based on this problem, now you can devise your hypothesis. You can say that, okay, so this is my hypothesis and this is my null hypothesis. So what hypothesis and null hypothesis you have already studied in previously, I guess. So, and then beside this, if your study is not based on hypothesis, then maybe you can find out whether you will be following any inductive process or deductive process, okay, or you will be following any technological logic in your study and so on. And then if you say that, okay, I'm not going to follow all these things as well, I mean inductive, deductive, এগুলো তো ওখানে থাকার কথা। So briefly হচ্ছে তুমি একটা broad idea থেকে you are narrowing down, or from narrow idea থেকে তুমি broad এর দিকে চলে যাচ্ছ তোমার স্টাডিতে। ওকে, কিভাবে তুমি ড্রপ ডাউন করছো সেটাই হচ্ছে এই স্টাডির ফ্রেমওয়ার্কটা। Or you might select something which is based on modeling, for example empirical model, knowledge based model, process based model, or stochastic model. Okay, so এই ধরনের মাল্টিপল মডেলকেও উপরে বেস করে তোমার প্রবলেমটাকে তুমি সলভ করতে পারো। So in the first step, it only deals with the problem. What is your problem? How are you going to solve it? So that means in the first step, you are actually having the design of your entire study. বুঝতে পেরেছো? যখনই বলছি যে statement of problem, it's not really only the statement of problem. It deals with everything that is related to the problem, including what is the problem and how am I going to solve this. Well, that is the design of the study. So virtually now you are already having the design in your mind. How are you going to solve the entire problem? So based on the design, now you come to for data collection. For example, your design says that, all right, I'm going to collect data on vegetation, okay, in Bawalgor Park, National Park. So what do? You can have multiple measurement techniques. You can have multiple data collection techniques. Okay, for example, you can go to each tree and you can measure their condition of their health. Or you can select randomly, you can select 3 or 5 trees from, you can divide the entire study area into multiple zones. And from each zone, maybe you take 5 or 3 samples. And then you say that, okay, so these are my sample size and I'm going to, inference based on these sample sizes, or I'm going to generalize based on these samples, the results of these samples. And what else you can do? You can collect samples. That means you can collect leaves, you can collect, different sticks and other things from the trees. You can also collect the foliage from from the ground and bring them into laboratory and say that what is the condition of the vegetation health in that forest. Or what you can do is you can take remote sensing information. You can take a drone, you can fly the drone above this forest and collect multiple band information or multiple information in different bands. And then now you can compare this and play with these bands, do multiple calculations, and you can precisely, you can find out the, the health of the vegetations. So there are, so in this study, what we do is we mostly deal with the remote sensing. Okay, if you are dealing with remote sensing study, then you will be dealing with remote sensing data. So that's why this is in red box. So this part deals with remote sensing. So in remote, when it comes to remote sensing, we have multiple cameras. We have passive cameras. We have active cameras. These passive cameras are mostly multispectral and hyperspectral, and these are scanners. Or you can simply take your camera, just like the DSLR camera that you use every day. You can take the camera as well and take a photo with it. So these are the passive sensors. And the active sensors, there are radar sensors, which are SAR, synthetic aperture radar, could be, or something different radar sensor, or it could be also laser. It could use laser technology, for example, LiDAR data that we talked about. Then once you collect all this data, you need to process this data. Okay. So in these sorts of example, what we do is we, try to analyze based on the data. We try to clean the data. That means clean means if there is some error, there is some extra element, or there is some element which is going to create some bias, we try to remove that data. Okay. And also, if the study is based on hypotheses, we try to test our hypothesis, whether are we going to accept or reject that hypothesis. However, if it's remote sensing, then we have to process our data, that is remotely sensed data. And what do we do in the processing part? We do a radiometric correction, geometric correction. We do some enhancements. We do classifications. We do modelings. We do visualizations, etc., etc. Okay. So not all of them. We will not be dealing or talking with all these things, but some of the things will be covered in this course. And this one, obviously, all of them will be covered in this course. And then information presentation. So how are you going to present your information? Do you remember what is metadata? I think we talked about metadata in 2207. Okay. If not, we will be talking about metadata in 3201. So anyway, so we deal with metadata. We present our information of metadata, and then we also do the accuracy assessment of all these processings. And then we also do, we export the data and then apply this data into multiple sectors. We can create orthophoto map. We can create thematic maps. So thematic maps, if you can recall from GIS course, it has particular themes. For example, if you create one land cover map, that one is a thematic map. Okay. We can export this data into GIS database. We can create animations. We can create simulations. So simulations are based on stochastic statistics. Okay, and so on. So by doing this, we can also apply multiple studies. We can bring in socioeconomic data, and we can apply univariate or multivariate studies or bivariate studies. Okay, so what is univariate, multivariate, bivariate? It relates to the number of the variables. Okay, so variate comes from variables. So uni is the number. So uni, bi, multi, these are just 1, 2, and multi. And finally, you based on the analysis of these images, you can always create graphs. These graphs or the graphics of data presentation could be in single dimensional to 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional as well. Don't worry, don't be scared by saying this. These are very simple. We will one by one, we will discuss them throughout this course. Right hand side or right. So what does remote sensing systems collect? Now we are talking about this second part, okay? So it collects two types of data. So one is analog data, another one is digital data. So analog data is the hard copy aerial photography or video data that are available from the past. For example, in 1920, there were no computer, there were no sensor available. So, but there were multiple cameras available, photography cameras, that is. There are films available. So what people did, they flew with the balloons or on aircraft, and they took photos from up above. And these photos, these films were later developed and distributed, and they still survive. You can still find them in different libraries or different archives. So if you take this data and if you want to analyze them, yes, still you can do that. And if you do that, that is still remote sensing. But at that time, you will be using analog data, not digital data. On the other hand, digital data, it relates to the sensor mostly. Okay, so there are multiple sensors. And if we talk about optical data, which is just like optics, that is, which is just like eye, the way you see the world, just like camera. I mean, your DSLR cameras, they are based on sensors now, right? You do not use any film. খেয়াল করেছো তোমরা ওই যে ফুজি ফিল্মের আগে যেরকম পাওয়া যেত না ওরকম ফিল্ম কিন্তু ইউজ করো না এখন সবই সেন্সর okay so if you have that sensor and in that sensor is structured in this way, there are multiple lines of tiny sensors, okay, and then if each grid is or each sensor is responsible for a specific signal, and that's how your camera sensor actually detects things. So just like that in remote sensing as well, in digital data, what it does is this every pixel which were detected by individual sensor, okay, individual sensor প্রতিটা পিক্সেলের ডেটাকে কালেক্ট করছে এই পিক্সেলের জন্য একটা সেন্সর আছে এই পিক্সেলের জন্য একটা আছে এই পিক্সেলের জন্য একটা আছে এই পিক্সেলের জন্য আছে so if you have one remote sensing image like that, you know these image was collected by some sensor which would look like this. So these sensor were collecting this image, this sensor was collecting this pixel, and this sensor were collecting this third pixel, and so on. Okay, and this sensor was collecting these pixels, something like that. So now, whenever these pixels are getting collected, the information that the sensor is recording is actually the brightness value. Okay, so brightness value is also known as BV. Don't forget this, BV, brightness value. Okay, so what it does is, let's say for example, your area have, or this sensor has levels of sensitivity from 0 to 255. So
Sir.
if it's 255, yes.
স্যার একটু ইন্টারাপ্ট করব স্যার জি স্যার আসলে স্যার 3:45 আরেকটা ক্লাস আছে তো স্যার যদি বিরতি দিতেন স্যার
খেয়াল করি নাই ওকে ঠিক আছে এটা নিয়ে আমরা নেক্সট উইক থেকে শুরু করব থ্যাংক ইউ কোনো প্রশ্ন আছে থ্যাঙ্কস ফর দ্য রিমাইন্ডিং আমি ভুলে খেয়াল করি নাই কথা বলতে কারো কোনো প্রশ্ন ওকে প্রশ্ন না থাকলে থ্যাংক ইউ তোমরা লিভ নিতে পারো আমি এই যে রেকর্ডিং অফ করে তারপরে এটা ক্লোজ করে দিচ্ছি তোমরা চলে যেতে পারো থ্যাংক ইউ বাই
আসসালামু আলাইকুম স্যার